We continue now at the top of Daf Tesam at Aleph and Meseches Menachos. This is Menachos Daf 9a. And the previous summit, the Gemara brought a statement from Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said that a carbon shlomim that is slaughtered in the heichel is going to be kosher. Shelo yehei tafel chamer min ha'ikr. The tafel here refers to the azara. The azara is secondary to the heichel. If it can be slaughtered in the azara, so certainly lo tehei tafel chamer min ha'ikr. What is secondary should not be stricter than what is primary, and therefore certainly if it is slaughtered in the heichel, it is kosher. And the Gemara is in the middle of asking a question from a brisa. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira in the brisa says, from where do we know that if enemies are surrounding the Beis HaMikdash, that the Kohanim are able to eat the kodshim inside of the heichel? The pasuk says, "Ba kodesh hakodoshim tochlenu." It says it is eaten in the kodesh hakodoshim, and Rashi explains, "Ba kodesh hakodoshim be parshas vayikach Korach." This is in parshas Korach. Ule'el minei ksiv. Earlier from this, it says in the pasuk, "L'chol chatosom u'l'chol hashamam ba kodesh hakodoshim demashma heichel." The understanding of the pasuk is we're talking about the heichel, the iazora, because if we're talking here about the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash, behed yoksib b'chatzar oel moed, it already says explicitly b'chatzar oel moed. Now the Gemara is about to ask the question, v'im isa di alfinan mehai taima to lo yehei tafel chamer meikr. If we're able to learn out just from a svara of lo yehei tafel chamer meikr, again as Rabbi Yochanan said, and so the Gemara continues and asks, v'halamali krasa, what's the purpose of this pasuk? Why do we need a source from a pasuk? Lema, we should simply say b'chatzar oel moed yochlu. It says in the pasuk it should be eaten b'chatzar oel moed, which is in the azara. V'lo yehei tafel chamer min ha'ikr. We should say that tafel, what is secondary, should not be stricter than what is the ikr, what is the primary, and that should be the reason why the kodshim can be eaten inside of the heichel. And the Gemara continues and answers, avoda, when it comes to avoda, and that here refers to the shchita of the carbon shlomim inside the heichel. By avoda, the adam oved b'makom rabo, where a person would serve in the place of his master. So amrinan, so then we say the logic, then we say the svara, shelo yehei tafel chamer min ha'ikr, that what is tafel, what is secondary, should not be stricter than what is primary. But achila, when it comes to the eating of kodshim, she'ein adam ochel b'makom rabo, in general, a person doesn't eat in the place of his rebbe, in the place of his master, and so there we need a pasuk, taima de kasav kra. The reason why we know it can be eaten in the heichel is because it's written in the pasuk, halo kasav kra, but if it's not for the fact that it was written in the pasuk, lo yehei tafel chamer min ha'ikr lo amrin, and we would not necessarily say that the tafel cannot be chamer, cannot be stricter than the ikr, the secondary cannot be stricter than the primary. Essentially, the svara does not necessarily apply when it comes to the eating of kodshim. And the Gemara continues, Itmar, it was stated the following, Machlokas Amuroim, Balala, if one mixed the oil in a carbon mincha, Chutz L'chomas Azara, outside of the wall of the Azara, Rabbi Yochanan Amar Psula, Rabbi Yochanan says it's disqualified in such a case, and Reish Lakish Amar Ksheira, Reish Lakish says that it is kosher. And the Gemara explains, Reish Lakish Amar Ksheira, Reish Lakish says it's kosher, D'chsiv, because it's written in the pasuk, V'yotzak oleh Hashemin v'nasan oleh lavona, it says that the oil will be poured, the frankincense will be placed upon it, V'hadar, and then it says, V'hevia el b'nei Aaron haKohanim v'kamatz, it says, then it's brought to the b'nei Aaron, to the Kohanim, and the kmitza, the fistful, is taken. And so we learn from that, mikmitza v'elach mitzvahs kahuna, from the kmitza and onward, that's a mitzvah for the Kohanim. And limed al yitzika uvlila, that teaches about the pouring of the oil, the mixing of the oil, sheksherin bizar, that is kosher even with a non-Kohen. Umid the kahuna lo boyin, from the fact that kahuna is not required, again talking about the mixing of the oil, so panim nami lo boy, so the fact that it be inside, in this case again inside of the azara, that is not required. That's the opinion of Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Rabbi Yochanan says psula, it's disqualified. Kevan da'asiyasa b'klihu, since it's done in a vessel, it's made in a vessel, prepared in a vessel, nihida kahuna lo boy, granted that kahuna is not required, but panim miyos boy, but being inside of the azara is required. And the Gemara continues, Tanya Kavasid Rabbi Yochanan, we have a brisa that supports Rabbi Yochanan that it's disqualified. Bolila zar kasher, if it's mixed by a non-Kohen, it is kosher. But chutz l'chomas ha'azara, if it's done outside, if it's mixed outside of the wall of the azara, psula, then it is disqualified. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Itmar, it was stated the following, Machlokas Amoroim, Mincha shechasra kodem kmitza, Mincha which is lacking, it does not have the full measure before the kmitza, before the taking of the fistful. Rabbi Yochanan Omar Yavi mitoch beiso v'yamalena. Rabbi Yochanan says he can bring from his house and fill it up. He brings flour and he can refill. Reish Lakish Omar, Reish Lakish says Lo Yavi mitoch beiso v'yamalena. He shouldn't bring from his house to refill. And the Gemara explains, Rabbi Yochanan Amar Mevi mitoch beiso v'malena. Rabbi Yochanan says he can still bring from his house and fill it, because Kmitza Kavale, it's the Kmitza which establishes it. And so since the Kmitza has not happened yet, it's still not going to be disqualified. Reish Lakish Amar, Reish Lakish says, Lo yavi mitoch beiso v'malena, he shouldn't bring from his house to fill it, because Kedushas Kli Kavale, it's the Kedusha of the Kli, the sanctification of the vessel, that establishes it. And Rashi explains, Kmitza Kavala, it's the Kmitza which establishes it. Dechol kama de lo kamitz, meaning as long as the Kmitza, as long as the fistful has not been taken, lo mikri mincha, it's not called a carbon mincha, velo karina bei minha mincha prat l'shechasra, and therefore we don't refer to it using the pasuk of minha mincha to exclude when it is lacking. And Rashi continues, Kedushas Kli Kavala, again, according to Reish Lakish, it's the Kedusha of the vessel which establishes it, b'shem, that makes it like a mincha, v'karina ba minha mincha, prat l'keshachasra. And so therefore, already at that point in time, we can say that if it's missing, then it is going to be disqualified, according to Reish Lakish. And the Gemara continues, Eisvei Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan asked Reish Lakish from a Mishnah in Meseches Negoyim. It says in the Mishnah, Chaser halug, if the lug is lacking, this is talking about the oil of the mitzora, Imad shalo yotzak yimalenu, if it's before it was poured, then he is able to refill it. And so you see that refilling it is fine. And the Gemara says to Yufta, indeed, this is a refutation of Reish Lakish. And Rashi explains, Chaser halug, if the lug is lacking, Shemen shal mitzora, this is talking about the oil of the mitzora, Ad shalo yotzak al kapo hasmol, before he pours it onto his left palm, Yimalena, he can still fill it. V'lo amrinan, we don't say the kavalahu lug shehu klishares, that the lug, which is the klishares, we don't say it establishes it in order that it is disqualified. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Itmar, it was stated the following machlokas amoraim, and this was discussed earlier. Shirayim shechasru ben kmitza lahaktara. Let's say the remainder of the karban mincha, it is lacking, it does not have the full measure, and that happens between the kmitza, between taking the fistful and the haktara, the burning of the komets. So there we have a machlokas amoraim as follows. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Rabbi Yochanan says, maktir komets alein, one is still able to burn the komets even though the shirayim is missing. Reish Lakish Amar, Reish Lakish says, ein maktir komets alein, one is not allowed to burn the komets in such a situation because again, it's shirayim shechasru, some of the shirayim, some of the remainder of that karban mincha is missing. And the Gemara continues, Alibad Rabbi Eliezer, according to the Tana Rabbi Eliezer, we'll see in a moment, Kuli Alma lo pligi, there is no machlokus within the sheet of Rabbi Eliezer. And Rashi explains, Kuli Alma lo pligi, there is no argument within the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Dema hecha do avdu shirayim o nisrafu, kamachsher Rabbi Eliezer lekamon lahakter komets. Rabbi Eliezer will say later on that even in a situation where the shirayim, where the remainder of the karban mincha is totally lost or is burned, it's still kosher to burn the komets. So kol shekein chasr, certainly if it's just missing a small amount of it, the ika shiur b'miksasa, where some of it is remaining, certainly it will be kosher according to Rabbi Eliezer, according to everyone. And the Gemara continues, Ki pligi aliva de Rabbi Yoshua, when do the Amoraim, when do Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish argue? It's within the shita, within the opinion of Rabbi Yoshua. The Tanan, as we learned in a Mishnah, nitmu shireha nisrafu shireh, if the remainder became tameh, if the remainder was burned, avdu shireh, if the remainder was lost. Kemidas Rabbi Eliezer, according to the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, kesheira, it will be kosher. Kemidas Rabbi Yoshua psul, and according to Rabbi Yoshua, it will be possible, it will be disqualified. And Rashi explains, Kemidas Rabbi Eliezer, according to Rabbi Eliezer, this is Rabbi Eliezer, Do'amar reparakeitzat solin, he says in parakeitzat solin, in Meseches Psachim, V'yasisa olosecha ha-basar v'hadam, dam afal pishein basar, he says the blood, the avod of the blood can be done even if there is no meat. And so therefore, just like he says that in the situation of an animal carbon, he's going to say the same thing by a carbon mincha, and so therefore kasher, it's going to be kosher lahaktir hakomets, one will be allowed to burn the komets below shirayim, komets without the remainder, dumya dedam, below basar, that's similar to a situation of the blood without the meat. And so again, that's what it means, kemidas Rabbi Eliezer, it is kosher. And Rashi continues, kemidas Rabbi Yoshua, according to Rabbi Yoshua, it's going to be puzzle. Do amar imein basar ein dam, he says if there's no meat, then there is no avoda that can be done with the dam, with the blood. Imein dam ein basar, if there's no blood, there's no meat. Puzzle lahaktir hakometz, so according to Rabbi Yoshua, then it would be disqualified, one would not be allowed to burn the komets. And the Gemara continues and explains the Machlokas Amoraim now between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, again within the opinion of Rabbi Yoshua. Man de Pasal, the one that says Pasal over here, by Shirayim Shechasru, Ben Kamitza LaHaktara, that one is not allowed to burn the komets. So the one who says one is not allowed to burn the komets, which is Reish Lakish, Rabbi Yoshua, he's just following Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Yoshua says over here, by Avdu Shira, if the remainder is lost, so then one is not allowed to burn the komets. And so the same thing is going to be true. Let's say it's Shirayim Shechasru. Uman de Machshir, and the one who says kosher, meaning Rabbi Yochanan, who says that by Shirayim Shechasru it's okay to burn the komets. So he will say as follows: Ad kan lo amar Rabbi Yoshua Hasam. Rabbi Yoshua is only strict over there. He's only strict in a situation of nitmu shira, nisrfu shira, avdu shira, ela delo ishtayer. That's only because there's nothing remaining. Aval hecha de ishtayer. But if there's something remaining, afilu Rabbi Yoshua modele. Even Rabbi Yoshua, he would admit it's okay to burn the komets. And the Gemara continues, Detanya, as we learned in the following brisa, Rabbi Yoshua Omer, Rabbi Yoshua says, Kol hazvachim shebetorah, all slaughtered karbanos in the Torah, all animal karbanos, shenishtayir mem kezayis basar or kezayis chaylev, if there remains a kezayis of the meat or a kezayis, an olive's amount of the chaylev, of the fat, so then zorek hadam, then one is allowed to throw the blood. Kachatzi zayis basar, kachatzi zayis chaylev, if it's just a half a zayis of basar, a half a zayis of chaylev, so then eino zorek es hadam, one is not allowed to throw the blood. Uvi ola, and by a carbon ola, afilo kechatzi zayis basru, kechatzi zayis chaylev, zorek es adam, even if it's just a half zayis of meat and a half zayis of chaylev, one is allowed to throw the blood, mipnei sheba ola, kula kolel, because by a carbon ola, everything is burned on the mizbeach anyhow. Uvi mincha, and by a carbon mincha, afal pisha kula kayemes, even though it's all kayemes, it's all still there, it all remains, lo yizrok, he shouldn't throw the blood. And Rashi explains, kezayis basru, kezayis chaylev, bepsachim nafkalan beketzat solin. This is learned out in Pesachim in Paraketz Solin, to Mishum Chaylev Nami Zork, that on account of the Chaylev as well, the Chaylev is part of the sacrificial portion that's burned on the Mizbeach, so on account of the Chaylev also, one throws the blood. T'chsiv, as it's written, V'zorak HaKohen as Adam v'hiktir HaChaylev. He throws the blood, the Kohen throws the blood, and burns the Chaylev. Alma Chaylev Afal Pishain Bas. We see that as long as the Chaylev is there, even though there is no meat, again, as long as you have a Kezayis, but Kachatzi Zayis Chaylev, Ein Zorek, if it's a half Zayis of Chaylev, one does not throw the blood, even if there's also a half a zayis of meat. Shein achilas basar v'achilas mizbeach mitztarfen, because the consumption of the meat and the consumption of the mizbeach is consuming the chaylev. We don't combine that to make the kezayis. Zrikas dam eina elo lahatir emurim lemizbeach ubasar laadam. The whole purpose of throwing the blood is that it is a matir, it's a permitter. It allows one to then sacrifice the sacrificial portions, burn the sacrificial portions on the mizbeach, and it allows the meat to be eaten by people. V'kevan do'avdu shnehem zrika lam, and once those are both lost, there is no purpose for the zrika. Uva'olan, by a carbon ola, debein basar, bein chaylev, kulu lemizbeach salki, there, whether it's the meat, whether it's the chaylev, it all is going to be burned on the mizbeach. So then mitzdarfim, so then you can combine the basar and the chaylev. And then again, the Gemara said that by the mincha, even though it's kula kayemes lo yizrok, which the Gemara will address on the next Amid, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Tes Amid Beis.